Why?
I am very upset right now, and I was hoping perhaps you could give me a little bit of empathy.
Yeah, sure. Tell me, what's up?
So, lately, I've been having a lot of new people enter my life, and one of the things that's very unique about me is that I'm a journalist. And so my work timings are very, very different from the average person. I don't get to control when somebody I'm interviewing is available. There are often Sundays or late nights. If somebody's in the US, it'll be early morning. There are often even days like national holidays, I'll be working. And I think these new people who've entered my life haven't been able to calibrate themselves to my life and to my work timings. And recently, I had to be left out of something because plans were not communicated to me beforehand, and I couldn't make those last minute adjustments.
Right.
And it's not making me feel very good. I feel very sad. I feel angry and resentful on one part, and I feel extremely confused about what to do.
Yeah. So can I just rephrase what I heard so that we are on the same page?
Right.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you have a job that takes a lot of your time and you are not able to really schedule other stuff that happens in your other personal life. And the people who've entered your life, the new people, as you said, I'm guessing they're other family members and they're not really aware of your schedule. And so when you're left out of those personal festivities, that brings you a lot of sadness and you feel lonely and alone. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
So I'm guessing you're just feeling lonely and sad and isolated, and that's bringing in a lot of discomfort and lack of safety in your body. Is that so?
There is an immense lack of safety and also a lack of warmth. I feel I need a lot more intimacy and nurturing than what I am receiving right now.
Yeah.
And that is creating a sense of stress, and it ultimately makes me feel very unsafe in the company of such people.
So what I'm hearing is that you're really longing for more partnership and collaboration and more harmony in these relationships, more care and consideration.
Yes, consideration especially because harmony is a result of a lot of other things for me. One of them is consideration. Another huge thing is communication.
Yeah.
And I'm really missing out on that.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's like an understanding you're seeking in that communication.
It is.
People who kind of reach out and ask you, take time to figure out how you are at any point of time.
That is true.
And take time to schedule these things as per your needs and requirements. That'll really make you feel that you matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm
do
already
you feel
feeling
now?
much. I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling as though while speaking to you, I was able to break down my emotional reactivity. So, when you're in a spiral and, all you think you're feeling is anger and sadness, but when you said those words, understanding or harmony, they triggered a deeper sense of meaning for me.
Yeah. Wow. And I am guessing that you're feeling a lot more self-connected at this point of time, is it?
I am. I'm feeling like I know a little bit more about what I need.
Wow.
And
And you're feeling calmer and safer.
I am. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for speaking.
This is Sonali Acharji, and you are listening to Health Wealth, a podcast where we hope to understand all aspects of health and well-being, but with as little stress and as little confusion as possible. What you heard right now was an example of empathy. I had just gone through a moment which made me feel very unhappy, and I needed someone to give me empathy. But you might be asking yourself, what on earth is empathy? And why did this person need it at all? Well, if I can take you back to the time when I was about 10 or 11, and I saw a film called Funny Face, which has Audrey Hepburn and Fred Astaire in it. And this was the first time I ever heard of that word, empathy. And in that film, the leading lady talks to Fred Astaire and says that empathy is very different from sympathy. Empathy is when you can really put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand that even though the story which they are leading in their lives is not something you have ever experienced, but you understand that that is their reality and you empathize with whatever emotions or feelings they might be feeling without judging it or without calling it right or wrong. It is what it is. And since then, I have been wondering a lot about empathy. We throw this word around all the time. And I came across a concept much, much later on in life. It was, in fact, only 2 years ago that I came to know that there is a organization called Nonviolent Communication. And they practice giving empathy, and they have means for ordinary people, just like you and me, to reach out and receive empathy when we are going through bad moments in our life. Does it help? Is empathy powerful at all? Well, there is some research which shows that empathy will motivate pro-social behaviors. Empathy builds stronger connections between two people and between wider social groups. You can be extremely different from one another. You can have different needs, different outlooks, but through empathy, you can learn to understand and adjust and build a far more meaningful relationship together. At the very minimum, there's one thing that empathy can definitely do. It can reduce stress. And now I don't really need to get into the statistics of how stressed we are as a nation, but there's been enough studies done to show that anything between 50 to 80% of Indians today are experiencing a lot of stress in their lives. And you might, again, wonder, why do I even need to do anything about stress, right? Why can't my closet and my carpet just be my emotional graveyard forever? Why do I even need to undo the effects or the feelings caused by stress? Well, it's partly because stress by itself is not good for your well-being. It can lead to heart damage. It can lead to neurological disorders. It can even lead to poor digestion, hair loss, poor skin. And that's just talking about your biological responses. This isn't even extending into how it impacts your social relationships or your social well-being. Chronic stress is extremely bad for your well-being. And I personally have seen somebody who went from being a brilliant academic genius to struggling to get just a single word out of his mouth just because of repeated exposure to stress and uncontrolled emotional upheaval. So imagine if the next time you were stressed, there was somebody who could make you feel seen, make you feel heard, make you feel valued, so that at the end of that experience of talking, what you feel is a lot more than, oh, I've just gotten these emotions out. Oh, I've just vented to a friend. You feel lighter. Your body feels much more rested, and those stress hormones just start to melt away. Well, for the next 30, 40 minutes, I have somebody else with me who's going to give us empathy, and if somebody's stressed, might help them reduce their stress through this talk. She is Jaya Sengupta. She is a journalist, and she is also a practitioner of nonviolent communication. She has been an empathy buddy for many people, including me at one point, and I know how powerful her words are, so I'm very, very happy you're here. Hello.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming all the way.
My pleasure.
And I know you're based in Mau, which is in Madhya Pradesh, and you've come all the way to Noida to do this with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I suppose, the real thing to start with, because I've been throwing all these terms out there, and a lot of it is just my non-professional understanding of this. So maybe we just start with talking about what is nonviolent communication.
So, nonviolent communication is a communication framework, and it was developed by Marshall Rosenberg in the 1960s. And the practitioners of nonviolent communication, we have a lot of processes and tools and some practices that we do regularly. And it teaches us how to express and receive messages, especially hard to hear messages, especially those that can trigger us, in a way where we can process them and instead of reacting, respond to them in a way that promotes empathy, understanding, and connection, and that kind of contributes to the general well-being, our own well-being and our relational well-being. So that is nonviolent communication.
It's very interesting because the first time I heard this, I actually thought, can communication even be violent? And I totally forgot that there are times in my life, when somebody said something, it might just be the smallest of things. And if you really introspect, you feel that heart rate quicken.
Yeah.
You feel that sense of dread in your gut. So clearly there was some violence that was done to me simply by speaking.
And we are violent to ourselves. The
Yes.
self-talk that we have within ourselves, where we have a lot of doubt and confusion, and we kind of blame ourselves or hold shame and guilt within ourselves.
Yeah.
Those are all violent.
Yeah. In fact, I just read an Instagram reel today morning and I just had to share this. It said, what if today you decided to be your own best friend?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is so tough at times. We don't realize
the value of it.
Yes.
Moving on, we've also been talking about empathy, since we started, and I've given my Hollywood version of it. What, according to NVC, is empathy?
Yeah, I think I heard your summary, and it just landed very well on me because you kind of brought in all the aspects of empathy. So in NVC, empathy is about a certain kind of warm, non-judgmental presence that we bring to the other person, and that usually comprises deep listening and understanding of what truly matters to a person beyond her words, beyond her feelings of anger and irritation, and her stories of judgment and blame and all of that. And so you can imagine empathy like a charging station. So what do you do when your phone gets discharged? You automatically go and charge your phone.
Yeah.
And so when you are emotionally feeling discharged, you need a place to charge yourself. And so you can imagine empathy to be that charge flowing through you, and that empathy buddy to be that charging station where you can go and you can kind of renew and feel rejuvenated and renewed in your energy that has been draining you. And so in the process of giving and receiving empathy, we learn to this, which we learn actually in NVC as a process, we learn to shift our focus from our habitual patterns of trying to stay in blame and guilt and shame, because that's what we've learned.
Yeah.
And we are conditioned to hold on to them because we feel that we cannot let go of our stories. And that doesn't help us, as you said earlier, because that really creates more constriction inside our own body. And we perpetuate trauma inside our body by holding on to those stories. So what do we do then? Because the pain is valid. The pain we feel is makes us really, it's so strong within us. We cannot ignore it, and we needn't ignore it. Instead, we create a process where we take the pain, and we take the pain as a messenger to tell us more about our longings and what truly matters in that moment. So in NVC community, we have these empathy buddies. We all have lots of empathy buddies we go to every day. And they help us in this self-connection.
I felt so profoundly moved the very first time I accessed an empathy buddy. It was possibly an extremely emotional, turbulent time, when everything was like what I would say is like the most bizarre khichdi you've ever made. Put every spice in your kitchen into it and you can taste nothing, and you don't even like the final taste, so you're just lost. So I felt very moved, and just suddenly, for all of those 10 minutes, all the khichdi just stopped boiling.
Yeah.
It came down to a gentle simmer, and I was able to sort out the spices, and I felt much lighter.
Yeah.
So we've talked, I mean, you mentioned the word empathy buddy once or twice, but perhaps could you just tell me a bit more about what is an empathy buddy?
So, like I said, the empathy buddy is like a charging station. You can also imagine her to be like a warm blanket when you're really cold and shivering, or an oasis when you're moving through a desert. Because this person is specially skilled to help you reach your own inner warmth. So the self connection that you miss when you are in that, you said, chemical khichdi, and you are not being able to feel rested or grounded, happens because you are separated from yourself. Your own doubts and fear and blame and stories separate you from your own self. And so the first place to find yourself is within yourself, in a space of complete non-judgmental acceptance. When you feel fully heard, seen, when you sense that there is warmth around you, you again start breathing. It's a kind of a sense of being whole and grounded. And so an empathy buddy is someone who's skilled to take you to that place of self-connection.
When you say the word heard, for me to be heard, there are a couple of things which matter. Number one, I don't like it if people interrupt. I don't like it if they turn the narrative into what they have experienced. So, two people could have gone through the same abuse or the same stressful situation, but their takeaways would be different because I have my limitations and they have theirs. I have my strengths, they have theirs. Another thing which I dislike very often is advice. When I'm trying to express myself, that also goes towards the thing that you're sort of turning it into how you see the world and not how I see it. Or judgments, what that person did was right or wrong. I don't even like that because, I wouldn't want anybody who's done something to me to be vilified. That's not the point of speaking. It's not to get that comfort, oh, that person was bad because they did that to you. That doesn't make me feel heard. So in NVC, how do you give empathy? How do you achieve that feeling of being heard and seen? What are the steps like?
Yeah, and even minimizing for that matter, because in all our best of intention, what we try to tell people is, don't worry, time will heal everything.
That too.
And
That too.
you're not alone. Everybody's facing that thing. The most important thing to remember is that when a person is feeling anything, she's experiencing a moment of disconnection within herself. And we fully see that. And that for that moment, for that person, that is absolutely valid. So the first job of the empathy buddy is then to listen without interrupting. And in a proper empathy call, we can go on listening till the end of words because that person has to first vent out. A lot of toxicity comes out first, and we just stay with it. We listen to all of that and hold space with warmth and care, with maybe some sounds like so that person knows that we are there.
Yeah.
And then at some point of time, we can intervene and rephrase what that person has said. This makes the other person feel heard, because then that person realizes and notices that there are no other stories that are being brought in. She's being heard exactly the way she wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
To take it deeper, we cut through the stories. Actually, after some time, the empathy buddy doesn't even talk about the experience. She just talks about the feelings. And there is some kind of a natural kind of a tendency when the person starts talking about her feelings. There is an expansion in her body. Now she started noticing herself, her own pain, and she's moving deeper into herself. She understands what she needs. And what is it she's missing? What is she longing for? What is it she values in that moment? And those words come up. And in NVC, we call them need words. And these are lists that can be found if your listeners look for it, Google search, NVC needs list, NVC feelings list. It very easily guides us. And from there, you can stay with the empathy buddy and reformulate some requests to yourself or others, and the empathy buddy is going to help you through this whole process.
Yeah. What I also heard when you were saying that there when I tell my story and you pick up on my needs and my feelings, I feel like you're trained in identifying the spices in my khichdi.
Yeah, and the ones that are really necessary.
Yeah.
Longing for.
That's an excellent skill to have. So can you tell me, once this is done, the process, what can empathy or receiving empathy do to someone? What is the final product going to be like?
Yeah.
Sorry, product seems like a very wrong word for this, but
What
what's the final
happens to you?
state?
What happens to you?
Yeah, what happens to you?
So receiving empathy is totally transformative. And if I ask you, what is the common thing we are all looking for in our life? Whatever we are doing today, whatever we want to do tomorrow and achieve, what is it we are really longing for? What would you say is what we are all longing for?
Connection.
Connection. And what will connection give us?
I mean, if I can go into my version of it, I think connection gives us a sense of the very basic of what it means to be human. What differentiates me from every other species is that I can not only connect within my biological family or my tribe, but I can connect with complete strangers.
And what will that give you when you
A
connect?
sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging. And what does that give you?
A sense of purpose, a sense of meaning.
Meaning, purpose. And what does that give you?
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. And what does fulfillment give you?
What does fulfillment give me? Joy.
Joy. Yeah. Joy. And joy gives you safety. So this whole thing of whatever we may be looking for at any point of time, in fact, you just give out that entire litany of needs words, because these are all universal. We are all longing for something or the other. We are longing for purpose, meaning. We are longing for connection, collaboration. We are longing for happiness and joy. And at the end of the day, we want all of that so that we feel safe within ourselves. And when we feel safe, we are able to connect to the life around us. And that's what empathy does. Empathy helps you to connect you to your deepest need of safety, gives you that safety in that instant of, when you are receiving it. And that is what you actually are longing for.
That is true.
And that's what keeps you, the moment you feel safe, then all your senses, they open up. And now you are ready to be more purposeful, and you are ready to take actions that are more purposeful and meaningful. And then you can go back living life in a more connected way.
So now we've been talking a lot about needs, and you mentioned that the needs list is available online. Perhaps could you also expand a little bit about needs awareness and why that matters?
Yeah, and needs awareness is very central to what we do. And needs awareness refers to recognizing that whatever you are doing or not doing, whatever you're saying or not saying, is propelled by the urge to meet a need. And curiously, these needs are all universal. Like I said, like needs to be seen, to be heard, to matter, to feel safe. These are all universal.
Right.
And so there is actually no conflict at the needs level. When you and I have a conflict, we are really conflicted over how what we are doing to meet our needs. And because we are not really aware of what our needs are, we are not able to change these behaviors to align themselves to the needs. And it is very easy when we start recognizing that everything we are doing or saying, even if you're abusive towards me, you're meeting a need. And if I'm able to connect to your deeper need, I won't take everything personally.
That is true.
And so from moving away, so what NVC does is the consciousness, it helps us to move away from asking this question, who is wrong, who is right, and who is to be blamed, because that's where violence, the seed of violence is sown.
That is violence, yes.
We are moving towards who needs what. So we are being able to recognize, we are having this fight and I need this and you need this. And this needs awareness is extremely transformative. That's where the shift happens and the healing happens.
You know, initially, I got married only 2 years ago. And when my husband and I started talking in terms of needs, he seemed to just naturally know about this. I don't know how. He's never been somebody who's enforced a worldview or seen things as right or wrong per se, or at least tried to make me see things as right or wrong. So initially when I entered there, and he used to keep saying, why don't you just tell me what you need? Why are you saying you're sad and unhappy and you're feeling, like I don't care? What's all this stuff? Just tell me what you need. So, but it did take a shift to adjust to a non-judgmental space. Does take a shift. And there are certain contours of that space also you have to respect. That just because I'm being given the space of safety and non-judgment where I can ask for a lot and I can express what I need. Just because I have that doesn't mean I take it for granted either, because he has his own needs.
Yeah.
And I can't be violent towards that either, because then that sort of spoils the space that you're trying to create. And I think that understanding came to me much later, that there has to be respect given for a non-judgmental safe space as well. And I realized that I can offer this to people, but not everyone will respect it. I can try and help them understand that this is how I need to be respected in return, or how I feel connected, or how I feel safe in return. And there are people who can't seem to connect deeper to themselves to break free of their worldview. And in that event, can I be empathetic and still have boundaries? And if these boundaries are getting completely muddied all the time and it's starting to cause me harm all the time, is empathy just a repeated act of submission? Do I just keep submitting because this person is clearly going through a bad time and I need to give them empathy? But do I sacrifice self-care then?
Yeah. That's a very profound question. And I'm guessing people may even want to know that if we need to be empathetic with everyone in the world, especially those who hurt us repeatedly, is it even possible to be so kind and loving and generous of heart all the time?
Yeah.
So the answer to all those questions lies in the understanding of why we need to cultivate empathy. Why do we do this at all? It is not because we want to be a messiah of goodness and we want to do good to others at the cost of us. And it is not so much about others as it is for ourselves. This is very important to understand, that when we cultivate empathy within ourselves, we are healing ourselves. So we are healing all our parts and we are feeling safe. So once you understand that, you have to figure out what kind of boundary you need to draw. Like communication is a little different from physical abuse. So if it's a physical abuse, obviously you move away from. And if it's mental torture and abuse that is perpetuated over a period of time, and the other person who is doing this is under-resourced and incapable of taking charge of their life and do things differently, then obviously you also have to kind of remove yourself a little bit. But in NVC, all these boundaries are done with great love, because I don't want to harm myself. I don't want to do anything inside me that's going to restrict me and make me cold towards others. So the practice is to see that everyone is helpless. Everyone is struggling. Everyone wants to meet a need, but they don't know. They don't know how to identify their needs, because the habitual conditioning has left us with all these blames and shame. And they've people actually lived and perpetuated trauma within themselves. Do I want to be that? No, I don't want to be that. So all boundaries can be set with great love. And with this opening that whenever that other person is ready, we are ready to connect.
They're not walls.
There are no walls. They are like veils. They're porous. And we'll allow ourselves to be drenched in that light of love and compassion. And to remember that compassion will flow in us, through us, only when we are completely safe, feeling safe within ourselves. We cannot give this to anybody when we are feeling unsafe. So taking care of ourselves, our safety, self-care is first. There's no question of, submission here, because empathy teaches us to connect to our needs and then become honest and vocal about our needs. And the way we do it is without a conflict. So suppose you and I are in conflict and you are saying something that has an opposing worldview and it is not sitting well with me, I can empathize with you. I can see that, oh, this means that this need is not met in you. I don't have to agree with you, but I can make you feel safe and give validity to your pain in that moment by just recognizing, yeah, you are feeling irritated because you hold this, you really value this. And this is what you want. Like today, when we are so polarized in the political world also, it is very easy to empathize with the other person because they really hold something that's valuable to them as well. That does not mean that I have to agree with them.
That is true.
And we can hold on to our safety without getting enmeshed in these, dialogues where we feel everything is personal and I have to prove a point. I don't have to. I just have to make the other person feel safe. As long as I feel safe, I will be able to do that.
Yes.
So how do I feel safe? I go to an empathy buddy and cry my heart out to that person and say, oh God, what rubbish this person says. And this person said something to me that really hurt me. And that person, the empathy buddy, helps me to connect to myself and I feel safe. And I say, now I feel connected. I am in a better state to have dialogues where I can make the other person feel safe. So this is never about submission. And also I wanted to say, we can put forward our needs. So let's say there is a political dialogue happening and I'm empathizing with you and you're an opponent. You are saying things that don't sit with me at all. I listen to you and I say, yeah, I understand that you really care about these things. The moment I say that person feels heard, something shifts in them. When something shifts in them, they are ready to hear me. And when I sense that, I say, would you like to know what is going on within me? And that doesn't come from a combative energy space. It comes from, hey, listen, I heard you. Will you like to hear me? And these are my feelings and these are my needs. This is how I feel. And my need is also, and most of the time, the funny thing is you'll find both the needs, the set of needs are same.
Yes, they do.
It's just that you want to look at it from a lens of right and wrong. And that's where we are getting stuck. And the moment we realize, oh, you also care for the country. I also care for the country.
Yes.
You care for it in a particular way. I care for it in a particular way. We can have space for disagreement without really, fighting over it, tooth and blood and making it seem like we are enemies. So we don't have to be enemies and we don't have to submit. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Actually, in fact, a couple of months ago, I was doing an interview at Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi with the Vice Chancellor. And she said something very interesting to me. She said that we have created space for healthy discussions and not arguments. And that was an extremely polarized campus at one point. A lot of protests would happen. And it seems now it's almost like a Hyde Park corner where they just sit and they discuss and they, you might not have to agree with one another, but you still have the right to say what you're feeling and say what your thoughts are. And it's being done in a completely nonviolent fashion and it's been very productive. So that really stood out for me. And, and it sort of ties into what you're saying. And given the sort of world we are in today, where pain and trauma is just everywhere. We're reaching new levels of cruelty every day. I think empathy is a very powerful tool. And could you tell us a bit about how one could access an empathy buddy?
Yeah, but before that, I just wanted to say that one more transformative thing that empathy does is that it helps us to live with the imperfections of the world. We learn how to mourn in NVC, and that is very different from suffering. And yes, all your needs may not be met in this moment, but the safety we create with each other in this empathy space really makes us feel strong in some ways. And we are able to then make space for all these imperfections and still feel that safety and calmness within us. Empathy buddy, if you are part of the NVC community, there is something called an nvc.org. And you can cnvc.org. I'm sorry, it's a center of NVC. So cnvc.org. You'll find a lot of important information there. And I can leave my phone number and others to help people connect to the different NVC forums in India. There is a pan-India kind of, there is a lot of people working pan-India on this. So they can find their groups and they can be part of a community. That really helps because if you're part of a community, then the practice entails that we have buddies. So you'll have lots of buddies instantly because everyone is practicing the same thing. You can also create your own buddies. Like you can just again connect with us and we help you. We take you through the steps. We teach you what empathy is, and if you want to have those practices in and around your where you stay, in your own community, it is quite possible to do that. Or within a few friends, like you want your closest friends or some of your closest people in the family, your husband or your child, I mean your daughter, your son or your mother, to understand the nuances, and you can start practicing. And we can take those sessions and classes and help you spread the word about empathy and enjoy it.
You know, every time I do a session on mental well-being or emotional health on this podcast, it almost becomes like a session of healing for me.
Absolutely.
So this
so
is
healing to be speaking also, you know.
It is. It is. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you for this
Thanks
opportunity.
a lot. So I recently came across this concept that really stood out for me. It's called glimmers. And it's the complete opposite of red flags and all the things that you see in the world around you which you don't like and that should be warning signs. Glimmers are the things in this world that make you feel energized, that make you feel 100% happy, and they're the source of light and warmth in your life. And I realized that when you're not stressed and when you're feeling safe, when you're in an environment or an inner circle where that sense of safety just exists, glimmers are everywhere. Today morning, every time I come to do a podcast, I am a little bit stressed. I am thinking about what to say and if I'm saying the right things and if I'll forget what I have to say. But today morning when I was getting ready to come into the studio, I was just stirring tea and I was just stirring the leaves into milk and water. And for those 5 minutes, I just felt so good about everything. It was a glimmer for me. It was just the beauty of having the tea that I loved, which has been brought specially by my husband to make sure that there's always a supply for it. And that love and that nurture came through in that gesture itself. It was the kitchen I'd always wanted. It was the utensils that were gifted to me on my marriage. It was the silence in that house. It was the presence of my 2 dogs who give me so much of love and care. So really, if you are happy and you're not stressed, you will find even the smallest things of life will just make you happy. There'll be glimmers everywhere. You know, you're in a universe of stardust, if you will. And empathy is definitely one way in which you can feel safe. However, I would add that if you are facing chronic psychiatric issues or if you are going through any sort of suicidal thoughts or self-harm thoughts, there are other support mechanisms which you can and should access, particularly a licensed therapist or a psychiatrist or a doctor if need be. So there is a whole gamut of mental health support available out there. And whether it's for a disagreement with a boss or for sleepless nights or for just not being able to eat or just feeling a constant sense of dread, whatever it is, you should take care of yourself. Can you tell me what this episode brought to you? Would you ever consider being an empathy buddy yourself? Has this episode changed your understanding of empathy? Do let me know. We are available at pods@indiatoday.com or on 8588966996. We are also available on Facebook, X, Instagram, and WhatsApp channels.